Hi guys, so it's Luke here for SimBoxx in association with Clint Patrick. Now today I'm delighted to be joined by Tasha Jonas. Natasha, how are we doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Good, good. So yeah, let's get straight into it. There's only one place to start. The recently announced fight with Katie Taylor for the undisputed lightweight titles on a massive platform as well. I'm sure you're very, very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I've kicked up a load of fuss and, spouted off and spat out my dummy about fights that I should have had, fights that I want and I'm not getting. And an opportunity comes and you've got to take them opportunities when they come. And, I haven't turned down a challenge yet.
That's it. And one thing that I'm really interested in speaking to you about, we're going to get onto the Teri Harper fight, but to go from the disappointment of not getting the rematch that we all felt you deserved to then get this kind of opportunity, how did that arise? To go from that kind of disappointment to such a big fight and a big opportunity fighting arguably the pound for pound number one female boxer on the planet.
I'll be dead honest. I think someone tagged me in a post that was from the Irish press saying we've heard a rumor that Natasha is Katie Taylor's next opponent, and someone on Twitter tagged me in it, and I was like, news to me, I haven't heard nothing, and they must think I was lying, but I genuinely hadn't heard any, I hadn't had a phone call, I hadn't had anything. So people kept on saying, oh yeah, she's got to fight, she's training, she's got to fight, but as part of Gallagher's, we do keep active in the gym, we never fully 100% stop. So I was like, I haven't. And then about 2 weeks after that, obviously Tom messaged me and was like, if they offer you the Katie fight, would you take it? I was like, of course I would. And then he was like, let me call you back. So then he went away and come back to me and went, I think I can get you the Taylor fight. I was like, okay, let's sort out the particulars. And yeah, it was agreed, but it wasn't actually signed. I think it was announced on the Friday. It wasn't actually signed until the Monday before. So even when people were saying, no, it's definitely here, and they was subtracting all the people that it could be and all the ones that have fought and all the ones that hadn't. And I was like, well, you never know really in boxing until it's announced, do you? Because, like last time, a lot of promises can be made, but things just don't materialize. So until it was announced, I was like, no, not saying that, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that.
It's quite interesting that you mentioned there about in Gallagher's gym, you always stay ready, you're always ticking over, you're not completely out of the gym. I was speaking to Marcus Morrison yesterday. He's, of course, on the same card in a huge fight with Chris Eubank, and he was saying himself, he's always in great shape, Marcus, and he said it's everybody in the gym. We don't really step out of the gym. Joe's always on top of us, saying that the phone could go at any time. And this fight with Katie Taylor for you and the Chris Eubank fight for him, it epitomizes that massively.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, Marcus could have a year off boxing, eating whatever he wants and still have a six pack and you know what I mean? So we're not all like Marcus, but yeah, I mean, especially in times like now when, the opportunities are so few and far between and, promoters are reluctant to even sign people to contracts because they don't know when they can get the people that are already contracted out. So it is a tough time to get on shows, and me and Marcus aren't contracted to anyone. So like I said before, you've got to take them opportunities when they come. And it's so tough to get on a show, and you've got to keep yourself ready just in case someone gets injured, someone fails a corona test, and so we're just always in the gym. And even if I didn't get this Katie opportunity, I'd have been still training like I am for the Savannah show, the Bridges show, the any other show that where a women was involved. I'd have been training like I was on that show because you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the interesting aspects to this fight with Katie Taylor, and we constantly say that women's boxing is growing, which it is. It's growing at a fantastic rate, but there's not the strength and depth. But there's a few fights out there, Savannah Marshall, Clarissa Shields, that's got the backstory, and this certainly with yourself and Katie Taylor it's got a massive backstory. There's this history there that goes back a good few years, all the way back to 2012 and the qualifiers to the Olympics, and then getting into the Olympics. It's of course going to be a very different fight, but to have that, in your mind that you've been in there and you've shared a ring with Katie Taylor, it's quite a unique situation. What's your memories, of course, of that fight? I think, did it set a record at the 2012 Olympics for being the loudest recorded sound or something like that in decibels?
Yeah, I think the Irish and the Scouse together was a good combination. you know what? I haven't got, even though I lost, I haven't got any bad memories of the fight at all. I mean, I was on a high going in because I'd won the day before. You know, it was the home tournament. So, you know, 90% of the people there were cheering for me, which has never happened before. We go to all over the world where they're just booing you constantly. So then, you know, I was down after 2 and I sat there in my chair and I thought, right, she's winning by about, I think it was 3-4 points. I can be happy that she's winning by 3 or 4 points and, you know, go down in history as it was close. It was a close fight. Or I can go for it here and see what happens. And I was like, right, no, I'm going for it. I wouldn't live with myself if I didn't. So I went for it, and the gap ended up being a lot more, but it made for a good fight. And you know, there was things I learned in that fight. There was things, you know, that I can't say I'd take anything from that fight into this one because we're both two different boxers. The game is totally different. We're not scoring points, you know, we're winning rounds, and you know, everything's changed. So like I said, I've got no bad memories of that Olympics. It was all good. I'd love to have come out with a medal. Unfortunately, I didn't. But you know, revenge is sweet.
Absolutely, and that's a great line. With the Olympics, and we've seen the way Katie Taylor went on to turn over with Matchroom and the huge fanfare that she got. Was it ever in the back of your mind that if you thought, you know, if you got the victory there in the quarterfinal, that you could have gone on to sign the huge deal with Matchroom and maybe, you know, get some of those opportunities what has been afforded to Katie Taylor on the back of the Olympics?
No, not really. I mean, I don't think the opportunity was there after 2012, and after my injury, and I knew I wouldn't qualify for 2016. I kind of thought boxing, when I retired from amateur boxing, I thought boxing was done because there wasn't much of a pro game here, and definitely not something that you could live off. So when I said goodbye to the amateurs, I thought I was saying goodbye to boxing. It was only when Katie went across and made, you know, her own route, and you know, people start to watch boxing, female boxing, that that other opportunities for everybody else. She opened the doorway for everybody else, and you know, again, I'm one of them people. You've just got to take your opportunities when they come. And you know, I just had a baby and I wasn't in shape, and loads of stuff was happening, and I was like, once she'd got into a routine and you know, I was settled and I was comfortable doing what I was doing, it was like, okay, now what's stopping you? Because at first I was like, I can't do that because I'm a mum now, and you know, and I've got a newborn baby that I've got to, you know, feed, and I've got to make sure she's all right and make sure she's on time, like, and all that. You're just trying to be the perfect mum. But then when she was in her own little routine and in nursery at this time, picking up at this time, then I was like, okay, so now that barrier's out the way, what is stopping you? And there was nothing, and there's nothing I could say to myself. So, you know, I spoke to Tom, I spoke to me mum and my dad, I spoke to my cousin who I'm dead close to, and I was like, right. And he was like, if you want to do it, we're 100% behind you. The baby won't be an issue and all that. And I was like, okay, let's go.
Amazing. Here we are now. You know what a great story that is, and if it, you know, plays out the way you want it to play out May 1st, that'll just be like the cherry on the icing on the cake. What a great moment that would be.
Yeah, you know, it's like there's something always keep me coming back. And I know people can overstay the welcome in boxing, and you see great legends and you think, oh, why are you still there? I don't want to mention one who's just come back, but you know, you can kind of date your legacy, I suppose, by doing that. But there's something inside that isn't complete. I don't feel that even though as good as my amateur career was and all the things I've seen and the places that I went, and there was something that I didn't achieve that I wanted to. And I think, you know, winning on the 1st of May would just, you know, like you say, just put the icing on the cake and draw a line under that, like, okay, now I'm happy. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely. It's great to hear. Was there ever a worry going back to 2018, the loss to Vivian Obanoff, and when you turned pro, and you and Katie was both professionals at the same time, there was always the clamour and you know the idea that one day you guys are going to inevitably clash. When that loss came, and it was a bit of a shock loss at the time, did you ever worry then that the fight had got away from you?
I wasn't even at that point. I didn't even have any eye on the fight because I was so heartbroken about the loss. And it took me a long time to repair myself mentally more than physically from that, because it's something that's never happened to me before, and I was gutted about it. Me and Jo had worked about the one shot that she had, And unfortunately, I just got caught with it. And there's no excuses. There's no nothing. It just was just one of them terrible days. But the journey back has been greater, and I've like dusted that under the carpet. And like, I think it's in the eyes of many people now, it's kind of like, because everyone was like, oh, Teri Harper's beat it open off, and you know, and you get compared. And I understand why people do that, because it's easy to do that. But you know, one loss doesn't mean everything, and it just because you've lost to that person doesn't mean that person will win to that person. It's just, you know, boxing's just a funny game, and it was just one of them nights that I've got no excuses for. We knew what she had, and unfortunately, I didn't concentrate, and that's what happened. So it was just a bad night in the office.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds that you've definitely took the lessons learned from that night on board, and you're a better fighter for it. Yeah,
I think, you know, I learned, especially in lockdown, I learned so much about myself, and like, my body can do anything and make any weight that it wants to, as long as my mind's with it. And I think that's the biggest thing. I have gone away and had to work on myself, because when you feel you're at bottom, especially in a sports related environment, because it is so results driven, that it's easy to you know, fall down and stay down. But it's the ones that succeed are the ones that keep picking themselves up, and that's, you know, that I don't know, resilience is what makes me me, and you know, has made me successful in the past. And you've just got to find you've just got to find it again, and you know, find something new sometimes, or go back to something that works for you.
Absolutely, it's amazing to hear. Now, this fight, again, it's another historic moment for Tasha Jonas. You become the first English female boxer to fight for the 4-belt undisputed title. It goes along with, and I don't want to miss any achievements off here, but the first female Team GB boxer, the first female Team GB female boxer to go to the Olympics, the first English woman to fight in an all-English or all-British world title fight. Is there anything else that I've missed off there? It's quite a list of achievements.
Oh, God, I don't know. First one to qualify for the Olympics, first one to box in an Olympics and win. That's it. That's as many as I can remember.
And then on May 1st, the first English woman to win the undisputed world title.
Yeah, I think, again, when you're an athlete, you don't focus on the accolades like that. It's only when you either achieve them and look back that you think, oh my God, that's something brilliant. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to being the first 4-belt champion instead of 2. You know, make up for the 2 that I lost.
That's it. You know what the funny thing is that, like you say, you'll take that opportunity to look back at the end of your career. But when I spoke to Joe Gallagher recently, he'd had it on the tip of his tongue. He must have been like rehearsing that at home to say, like, first female boxer to do this, that, and the other. He had it ready to go.
Joe loves a fact. He loves a fact.
How important of a person is Joe Gallagher to you for your career, and how much he's guided you and helped you throughout your career?
I think, you know, there's so many pitfalls in boxing. When we was on GB, everything's done for you. Like, you're kind of babied in a way. You know when you're eating, you know where you're sleeping, you know when your training sessions are, you know where your physio is, your doctor is, your sports psychologist, your video analysis person, all them, and you've got them at your beck and call. So, you know, when you go pro, everyone expects it. Like, you got this idea of being a pro and being signed to Matchroom or whoever, and it doesn't quite work out like that. And there's loads of mistakes you can easily make. First of all is signing a contract with a promoter. And I remember going through, I had a few offers at the start, and I was like, oh, but this one looks like it's more money. He was like, yeah, but how many can it guarantee you? And I was like, oh, okay. So it's little things to, you know, even to the big nights like the Harper. Joe has been in huge fights, Canelo twice, you know, Lomachenko, you know, Linares. He's been through them situations, and it's good to be able to dig into that like wealth of knowledge. But also, people, I know, like Joe's a bit like Marmite, and people either love him or hate him, and the way, the things that he does is all for the boxer. But there's some really good things that I don't want to say them, because I think he'd be embarrassed if it did, but he does some really good things behind the scenes that no one sees, with his academy, with us in the gym, you know, with and just like, he is like human at the same time, and he really does have our best interests at heart. And I think that's really important. And you know, when I speak to my mum and stuff, or when my mum speaks to Joe, she always says like, I know you know, she's like, yours in there, so I know that you won't let get her hurt. And that's like, that's the trust. He's like, you know, he's your protector when you're there, when you're in the ring.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear. Really, really amazing to hear. Now, like I say, we was going to touch on the Teri Harper fight, and that was again another fight that, in the build up and after the fight, you can see Joe Gallagher, the amount of support, and you know, he put himself almost in front of you, if you like, and he was taking the flak, and he was willing to do the back and forths and selling the fight, similar to what he done for Scott Quigg back in with the fight with Carl Frampton. I remember the build up to that fight, and Joe Gallagher saying, you know, I'll front this, you kind of focus on the fight. But with the fight with Teri Harper, of course, it was a contentious draw, a fight that you appeared to win. It was scored a draw, and I'm sure it felt like a loss. How did you recover from that and everything that came after it? You know, there's quite a lot of negative press. Joe Gallagher came out, and there was stories flying around, headlines flying around. But yourself, how did you bounce back from such a setback? Like I say, it was a draw that must have felt like a loss.
I mean, it was tough in the sense of like, you know, I come home, my eye was everywhere. The baby was like, Mummy, are you okay? Giving me a kiss on the eye, kissing it better. And she was like, did you win? I was like, not really, babe, but I didn't lose. And like a couple of weeks later, she made me a medal in school. Like they get to mess around for the last hour of the day or whatever. And she's gone, oh, Mum, look, I made you a medal because I know you worked hard and you didn't win. And I was like, oh. And it was things like that like it got to me. But I was in such a good place mentally for the Harper fight that I didn't want to come down. And I was saying, I want another opportunity. I don't want to come down, because then you can be guilty of coming down to people's levels, or you know, you can underperform. I'm in a good place. I want to perform like now. So I didn't let it bother me that much. And straight away, literally the next day, people were saying she's never going to fight you again. And there's already stuff. People were sending me like clips of people's Insta stories saying, oh, we're moving up and we're moving down and we're doing this and we're doing that. And I was like, oh yeah, that's fair enough. Like, don't send me them, because I'm not really bothered. Like, you know, I'll do what I'm doing. I did want the rematch. Of course I wanted the rematch, but I'm too old to sit around waiting for Teri Harper for the rest of my boxing career. I haven't got time on my side like her. So I was always going to find another way, whether that meant me putting myself in a mandatory position, or whether that meant me going for a different belt. That's what I was going to do regardless. So I wasn't going to wait around for it forever. But yeah, it was just, I just there's only so much you can mope about it and cry about it and whinge about it. It's just now, like, I'm just like, yeah, that's what it was. Let's move on.
Fantastic, fair play. It's good to see that you dealt with it quite swiftly. With that fight, similar to the Katie Taylor fight, if we're being brutally honest, you go into both fights as the general underdog. You know, the generally thought of underdog. Is that a role you feel like you can thrive on? Do you like the idea that there's no pressure on you, and that the expectation seems to be, you know, like Teri Harper was the next one Matchroom wanted to bring through, and now Katie Taylor seems to be the pound for pound #1 female boxer on the planet. Do you revel in the idea that you are the underdog? Do you embrace that role?
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? To be fair, I genuinely do believe that Matchroom think that they're throwing me to the lions, and I believe that the first time when they and I was saying all along, I was saying, look, there's nothing she does that's better than me. There's nothing she does that's better than me, and no one but me and Joe believe me. And I was saying, look, well, okay. In the end, I got that fed up of like saying to people, I was like, okay, we'll see. And that's the same that I'll be doing this time. I was like, okay, she's this unbeatable, unmovable object, this force that is, you know, this myth, legend. Yeah, okay, we'll see. And that's basically the attitude I'm taking. I mean, I don't think the bookies will ever have me as bad at odds as the Harper fight, and I was actually like a little bit shocked at that. And one of my sponsors had me for, I think, something stupid like 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1 on round 8. So when I wobbled there, you should have seen the pictures his wife was sending me. Well, obviously I've seen it later of the round 8, and he's screaming all over the telly. So it was quite funny, but they'll never have me that bad again, because they always know the underdogs in boxing. You know, how many underdogs recently have won? We've seen Garcia, we've seen Lopez, you know, you've seen lots of underdogs come and take titles and take belts and take wins, and you know, boxing's one of them sport where literally anything can happen, and I genuinely believe that I can win. I wouldn't take, not that I wouldn't take it if I didn't believe it, but I do believe I can win anyway.
I think that's it, you know, and not to go off on a tangent, but with boxing since the pandemic, for one reason or another, whether it's people seizing the opportunity or whatever it might be, but there has been a lot of instances where the underdogs won. You know, you mentioned there Lopez over Lomachenko, Lyndon Arthur beating Anthony Yard, Joe Joyce beating Dubois, and there'll be others, you know, Povetkin beating Dillian White the first time round. It's like people are really grasping onto the opportunities that they're getting and thinking, you know, this might be my last shot at the big time. So it is almost like the pandemic has been the year of the underdog.
Yeah, and not only that, like the way I see it, if you're in a competitive sport, if you can't get yourself up for the biggest night and the biggest competition of, you know, the 4 belts on the line, then you probably shouldn't be here. Do you know what I mean? So if you can't get yourself in the best version of you on that night, then you probably shouldn't be there.
You know, with Katie Taylor, you look at her as an opponent, and of course, as you say, she's looked great at times. But then in the fights against Delphine Persoon, she's not looked so good, and she's been in some really tough fights. Do you think there's a case to say that Katie Taylor's maybe peaked? You know, could she be on the decline ever so slightly?
I wouldn't say that. I think we're a bit sometimes a little bit harsh.
Yeah, say that.
No, yeah. No, I think sometimes, you know, like people who perform at such a high standard all the time, when they have an off day, or I'm not saying that Persoon was an off day, because I think Persoon's an absolute nightmare for anyone, and I think she's she is pound for pound top 5, I think, anyway. But you know, they've set themselves a standard, and people think that they can do that standard every single time, and some days you just can't, because you know the style won't let you, or whatever won't let you, whatever it is. You cannot have an off day, and especially in sport, and people don't, you know, give that enough like credit that you can just have an off day. But you know, I do think that, you know, I am not boxing this myth that is Katie. I am only boxing another human. You know, like all these things and titles, and you know, she's, you know, I respect her outside of the ring, but in the ring is going to be different. And I'm not fighting the legacy. I'm fighting the human. And you know, every human is beatable. Every human can lose. Every human can win. So that's how I see it.
Absolutely. It's yourself and Katie Taylor, you know, absolute flag bearers for female boxing. You know, you're leading the way. And then there's the next generation almost coming through, like Teri Harper, Chantel Cameron, Savannah Marshall doing very well. And you've got Shannon Courtney as well. She's fighting for a world title soon. Who was your kind of inspiration with boxing? Where did that all come around in terms of, you know, getting into amateur boxing? I know, was you keen with football as well, and your sister's a footballer, so was that ever a decision to get into football or boxing, and why was it boxing?
Boxing was a good accident. Some woman bugged me to go, and I went, and I never looked back. But for me, I think I've always loved, like, you know, I obviously played football. I loved watching boxing. That was mine and my dad. Sport was definitely mine and my dad's thing. Whether that was, you know, we had a season ticket to go and watch the Reds. Whether that was, you know, watching, you know, the Benz, Collins, Eubanks, and you know, all that times. That was our thing, and that was. So I've always watched male boxing. The only females I ever even heard of was Jane Couch, yep, Lucy Baker, Layla Ali, Anne Wolfe, and that was it, I think. Oh, Christy Martin. They're the only ones that I ever really heard of. But I remember being a football player, I think it was 94, 95, whatever year it was, and seeing that Jane had won a appeal or a case against the British Boxing Board of Control. And I remember looking at her and thinking, yeah, good on you, girl. Like, I never realised all the years down the line how much that would affect me. So really and truly, without Jane, there wouldn't be anybody else, especially here in Britain anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the great thing is with that, Tasha, is that, and again, it's not the kind of thing that you said you're going to look back on currently. It'd be maybe something in the future, but I'm sure there'd be girls out there boxing in their local amateur gym that's look back to 2012 and you being the first female boxer on the Team GB, and that's kind of inspired that generation. And maybe we won't see those kind of stories for the next, 4 or 5 years, maybe, but eventually there will be people that will turn around and say, I was inspired by the Tasha Jonases of this world.
Fingers crossed. I'm doing my job then.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we see yourself and Kate, and you've got that kind of Olympic pedigree, the amateur pedigree, and then you've got a world title fight like Shannon Courtney against Ebony Bridges, and that's kind of divided opinion on social media as to, why is this a world title fight? Is it due to the, they've not really got the records of yourself or Katie Taylor? Where do you sit on that whole argument? Is it because there's the lack of depth in the divisions and, the world title fights are happening sooner than maybe the record suggested would happen? Where do you sit with that?
To be honest, I will not knock anybody's hustle. So if the opportunity comes, it's not Shannon's fault and it's not Ebony's fault that, Shannon's with Matchroom and they have managed to get Windle at a world title. That's not their fault. The opportunity's there. They're going to take it. They're going to step up like they should. So, like, I'm kind of on the thing of, okay, but if someone said to you, because you knew the boss and where, right, we're going to give you a promotion because you're my mate. Would you not take the promotion because there's somebody there who probably deserves it better than you? Probably not. You're going to take the promotion and get better pay and whatever else and take the accolade because, and that's kind of the same way it works. We can't. I mean, I get both sides of the argument, but for me, it's like she's took her opportunity. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. So with this fight approaching and we're coming out of lockdown, and you mentioned there you've got your daughter, how difficult of a task is it to multitask almost, and we see, you've got your male counterparts and we often see boxers go off to camp and, their wives or their partners are at home and they look after the kids. But with yourself, you're balancing being a mother and training for the biggest fight of your life. It's quite the opposite role, if you like. And how do you manage that?
I think nobody is more happy than that the schools are back than me. And if a teacher asked for a raise, I would personally give it myself out of my own pocket because she's hard work and that homeschooling was something else. But, I think, like I said before, sometimes as a parent, you like a working parent, you feel like you don't have enough time. Like in the morning, you get fed, dressed, school. I rush to Manchester to do my 2 sessions up there, rush back to pick her up at 5. And, between 5 and half 7, I've got to get her fed, undressed, bathed, play, and bed again. So it's not enough time. And I did struggle with that at first because there not being enough time. And then, careful what you wish for. I had 24 hours of it. And then I was like, this is too much time. So it was just, but I think, I learned so much about my own child, and that sounds terrible, but I did in the lockdown that I didn't know before because I had so much time with her. And then she got to come along, especially to the Harper camp, and see what mummy does. She always knew what it was, but, today mummy went to gym and, mummy sometimes on telly or whatever, but she didn't understand what it was. Now she's been and she understands, like, this is mummy's work and what mummy's work is and what we do when I say I'm going to work, what it is that I do. So that was good, and just to get that, that bond and that a little bit closer. And as I say, she learned about me, I learned about her. Then, like, I couldn't get her off me. She was like, oh, I don't want to go. I want to stay at home, school to you. I was like, no. That's not happening. Get back to school. But now, I think you just fall back into a routine, but I'm still trying to keep that quality time, like the weekends and just make the most of what you've got. And everybody needs to work. So unfortunately, we have to do that. We have to make sacrifices, but it makes it all the more like important. Well, not important, but it makes it all better when you win and you can say, right, that's for that. And with the Harper thing, it was horrible coming back and being like, all that sacrifice, not for nothing, because there was so many benefits and good positives that I got from that. But it made it a little bit hard because you do make sacrifices.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and just to touch back on something you mentioned earlier, but that whole story of her making that medal because you didn't get the belt and stuff like that, I think that's one of the most like sweetest, amazing little stories and things that you don't really see, you know, through social media or through like a Sky Sports camera. I think that's really like amazing.
Yeah, she can be cute sometimes, that 1% of the day.
So obviously this past weekend we had Dillian White and Povetkin on the undercard. Campbell Hatton made his pro debut, and Ricky Hatton, in a couple of interviews in the lead up, he said, you know, I fought so he didn't have to, but he's chosen to fight. You know, if we get, I'm not sure how old your daughter is, but if we get 20 years down the line and she says, you know, Mum, you provided this life for me, but I want to do what you done. What's your mindset at that point if she wants to get into the game?
Do you know what? Like, I wouldn't be bothered. I think you've always got, like Campbell Hatton did. There's pluses and negatives of you being like someone like Ricky Hatton's son. Is that, you know, promoters do want you because you're a name. The same with Ben, the same with Eubank. So you know, start quite high up the bill. So they're good pluses. You're going to get a good deal. You're going to be looked after. But then there's also an expectation of how you will perform because your parent has been so successful. So it is, I think, personally, always harder to follow in the footsteps of your parents when they've been that good, because there is an expectation that you're just naturally going to be that good. So if she said to me, like, Mum, I want to box, it wouldn't bother me at all. But I think what I do is encourage her to be active, because I think there's so many, you know, qualities that and that sport instills in you that you need in life. But hopefully it's just a sport that I like. Hopefully tennis, because I've always wanted to go to Wimbledon.
Brilliant. So obviously, as we mentioned earlier on as well, your sister, she's a professional footballer, Nikita Paris. How's her career going at the minute? What's she up to?
She's in Lyon, in the Champions. They're still in the Champions League, I think. You know, they're doing really well in the league. I think they're number one. So yeah, it's all good for her. I haven't seen her for a little bit. We do message every now and again, see how each other's getting on.
Is that a competitive like sibling relationship? Do you both try and like outdo each other in terms of accomplishments or fitness or whatever else you're up to?
No, but we I think we secretly have gone through phases of that. Everything, especially like, you know, as a Jonas, everything is competitive. You know, from you could never beat me mum in anything as a kid, and the time that you did, you'd beaten her, because there's none of that. Oh, let the kids win in our family. That doesn't happen. So like secretly, everything's a competition in our family, and you know, when I say, oh, Tasha's got a boxing for GB now, in my amateur days, my uncle was like, well, I went to England and I done this, and then the others was like, well, I was a professional this. So everything's like as a competition, but in a good way, in a positive way.
You know, I'm just picturing the Jonas household at Christmas, and you all playing Scrabble, and it's like, you know, googling what words are what, and saying, you know,
listen, there's no Scrabble, but there could be a press up competition, there could be a hands down competition, there could be some like an obstacle course of something. That's the kind of competitions we will be doing, and let it be known that some of the 60-year-olds are fitter than some of the 15-year-olds. So yeah, I'm just playing in the happy medium at the minute.
Amazing. So, Tasha, just to close with, we've seen recently that you've turned your hand to punditry, and it's been, you know, you've earned rave reviews. It's been something that's been very well received, certainly online. Is that something you picture yourself doing once the day comes to hang up the gloves? Do you enjoy doing the kind of punditry work and talking about fights and having your input?
Yeah, how could you not? You got the best seats in the house and watching the biggest fight. So no, it's something definitely that I'd love to do a bit more of. There's certain bits that I'm more comfortable doing than others. I couldn't do all the introduction bits and all that, but I enjoy just commentating, because basically you're just saying what you see, and you know, one of the things I do try and be as honest as I can. So I think that people respect that. You know, there's lots of comments about, you know, people being biased and to their own stable, but I just say what I see, and I think that, you know, if you're a boxing enthusiast, that you appreciate that.
Absolutely, it's been, from what I've seen and what I've heard, it's been good. But final word, Tasha, with you, May 1st, what can we expect?
you can expect a win, you can expect fireworks, you can expect a good night of boxing, and that's what it is. Again, it's another momentous occasion where all eyes will be on women boxing, and myself and Katie won't disappoint.
Fantastic. We really do look forward to that. But thanks for your time today. The best of luck in camp, the best of luck May 1st, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Nice one. Thank you.